cultivated, realized, I don't want to know what verb you want, for helping do this. Get two things: getting the various disciplines to start to pursue integration rather than fragmentation, and connecting that to sort of the general issue of how we as embodied minded beings fit into a scientific worldview. I know that's a big question, but I'm really interested in it.
I think that the disciplines, by and large, are not very well incentivized to do
Yeah,
science
I
and
agree with that.
philosophy.
Yeah.
So that's something that we need to understand, that there are institutions in which people go to work to feed their children. And a scientist is, in some sense, to me, someone who has a particular kind of personality. It's someone who very early on in their psychological development has decided to trust their analytical thinking more than their intuitions, than their feelings and their emotions and so on. And typically this happens because they had Asperger's, and the priors that they had when they interacted with other people socially failed in school. And so at some point they realized I cannot trust my feelings, because if I go by my intuitions, my interactions with the world are going to fail, and I have to move to the analytical mode to make sense of the world. And if you are permanently in the analytical mode, that's a trauma mode, right?
Yes. Yes.
A healthy human being should understand that the purpose of analytical reasoning, which by itself is very brittle, is to go to deal with your darkest emotions, those where you don't see clearly what's what and in which way to go. And so analytical reasoning is a very powerful tool for very narrow areas of understanding the world. And
Well
these
said.
happen to be the ones that should be
Yes.
studied in the sciences. But it's wrong to present scientists as a lifestyle archetype and as the goal of education. Only a very small subset of people should be scientists. And the existence of scientists is very useful to the world, but being a scientist is largely not fun. And so we see science currently as more like an employment program, where we put people that are difficult to employ in the industry because we don't need that many people in the industry, and teach them methods, and then they apply these methods, and we hope that the results accumulate. And the outcome is largely not that interesting, because you're not being hired into a science to answer foundational questions. There are very few ways to answer foundational questions, because the low-hanging fruits have been wrapped long ago. And so you don't actually need that many people working in the foundational disciplines and making foundational progress. And you're not incentivized to have ideas about foundational things. So among the very few people that are willing to offer answer to foundational questions and are so bold and crazy to do this, there seem to be, in some sense, three groups. One of these groups is people that don't fully understand the depths of these questions and think that they found a very simple answer that solves the problem without actually doing so. These people tend not to be very interesting. Right? So there are simplified notions of consciousness that do not explain the necessary and sufficient conditions for a system being conscious. And they might lead to models in neuroscience or in AI or in robotics that claim to do a certain thing, but they don't. And it's not that interesting that these exist. Then there is another type of mind that is very humble. And these people say, I don't actually know what the answer is, and I have the following questions, and I'm aware of the following space of attempts to answer this. And I am currently moving in this area of the space. And this is what I'm seeing from where I'm currently standing, and this is how I'm able to interact with others from this vantage point. And I'm still in this exploration. And so it's a very tentative position and so on. And it's one that's also not being openly discussed very much, because a scientist has to publish the things that they can hope to prove, and not the things that they're seeing. And most of the things that we're seeing as a possibility, and most of the interesting answers on the realm of the possible, cannot be established by an experiment, because it's a possibility, right? So the possibility is often the most interesting things, and possibilities are difficult to publish and discuss about.
Exactly. Well said.
And the third group are the crazies. These are people that think that they have certainty, and they are super smart, and they go very deep. And often the crazies are also among the most interesting ones. But it also means that you have to parse them in the right way.
Yeah.
So the crazies are, for instance, Jürgen Schmidhuber or Stephen Wolfram and so on. These are people that, for some reason, aspire to greatness and force themselves to be great, no matter the personal cost to them. So they're not humble. And they do have theories of everything that they are not shy to denote as such and put out there. And these ideas are often extremely interesting to bounce up against and try to understand them deeply.
That's very interesting. Much in that was well said. I've been trying to talk about and model a form of interaction called dialogos,